Hello, good afternoon, good evening. I am Aklam Amanya, a student at Makerere University from the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, School of Women and Gender Studies, and I'm pursuing a master's degree of arts in gender studies. And I'm doing a course unit titled Gender, Conflict and Displacement. And as part of the continuous assessment, continuous kind of evaluation and examination, I'm required, or we required, to dialogue or to share with the public on what we literally study, on what we understand, on our take-ons from the course and from the course, different course units we do have or we do take on. This evening, I'm sharing with you on the area of gender and conflict. And most specifically, I'm looking at the sources and theories of war, the different kinds of theoretical assumptions and explanations and framings of wars, and also the material sources of war in general. Before we go any deeper, we have to first understand what a war is. And here it is. A war is a situation of anarchy, suffering, and violence over a period of time, and it is always characterized by or with a large score of effects on people, property, and the entire society at large. Was also characterized by being the most destructive forms or kinds of conflict, and was always happened due to the social and economic as well as ideological kinds of differences between and amongst people in the society. Wars are conceptualized differently by different scholars depending on different spaces and different fields. And I'm going to share with you different forms or types of wars. We have total wars, we have limited wars, we have hot and cold wars, we have nuclear wars, we have declared wars, we have accidental wars, and we have controlled wars. To explain some few of these given types of wars, for example, a limited war is the one in which the country does not inject much resources. So this is a less costly war. In other words, examples can include the Korean War between North and South Korea, and then we can talk about the Vietnamese War. We can talk about the war that happened within or on the land of the Falkland Island. And then the direct opposite of limited war is a hot is a total war. A total war is the one in which a country or a state injects almost all the resources at hand or available to win a war or to conquer a certain space during a war situation, a war period. And examples can include the World Wars One and Two. So here, this is a kind of war that is more costly in terms of resources, human resource, capital, money, and others like weapons and all that. Then a Cold War is a war of words. There is no direct confrontation or direct violence. Examples of Cold Wars can be, the Suez Crisis. It can be the collapse of the Soviet Union, and among others. And then the direct opposite of a Cold War is a hot war. A hot war is the one in which there is a direct confrontation and use of ammunitions and guns are blaring, and there is a score of injuries and effects on people and the society. An example of a hot war can be the Russo-Ukrainian war that is ongoing, the Sudani crisis that is ongoing, and all other wars that involve a real action, direct confrontation, and use of guns and other ammunitions. Then a nuclear war is a war that involves a large score of numbers of casualties with infrequent but yet depressing repetition, and then it involves use of full blast ammunitions and then nuclear energy, and then this causes a devastating and long lasting effect on the society that is far-reaching to people and detrimental to lives and property. Then to sum it sum it up all, we are looking at war as being a part and parcel of society's development and transformation. However much the development and transformational aspect here is contextual, but however it is, whatever it is, war is part and parcel of society's growth and development. And also warfare has transformed the social, religious, and economic aspects of society in different kinds of ways. Before wasting any other time, we should talk about the theories or theoretical assumptions or framings or explanations of wars. And here I'm going to talk about the two theories. The first theory will be the theory of greed and grievance theory of war. The second theory will be the youth barrages theory. And here, the greed and grievance theory of war is always explained in two different ways: the greed theory of war separately and the grievance theory of war differently or separately. Here, the greed theory of war, it talks about, or it analyzes war econometrically. Econometrically, what do I mean? It looks at the individual greed motivation for economic resources as the key aspect that causes war. That the more we want to amass, we want to control, we want to gain, we want to man more resources, economic resources in this sense, the more we are at a risk of confronting, of coming into war with one another. And then they say that most rebel groups, especially in less developed countries or developing countries, are funded by foreign aid with a background motivation of natural resource repair once those rebel groups get in government. Here is what I mean. We have a rebel group, for example, in a less developed or developing country like Uganda, and that rebel group wants to get rid of Museveni, and they are going to be given a financial aid by the so-called rich developed countries or states. That this is a deal. You are going to get guns, get support, get ammunition from us, and then get rid of Museveni. And after you getting rid of Museveni, you are going to exchange with us any natural or economic resources like minerals and all of that. So that's how wars happen. That's how conflicts happen as a result of greed for ownership and control of resources by either individuals or states or multinational agencies. Here, the summer point in this greed theory of war is that war is generally motivated by the expansionist agenda bent on economic resource control. Then the grievance theory of war, it talks about group identity formation breeding violence. As people try to identify and form spaces in which they are identified from, they end up confronting with other groups who also identify differently. For example, you can be having a group of a certain group of people, allying under an ethnic kind of space, and then in so allying, in so making alliances, they confront with the government or with any other security agents, and hence resulting into a certain kind of war. And then they say that relative deprivation of people results into war. People become deprived of their rights to access resources, to access social utilities, social spaces, public amenities, and in so doing, by the government, incumbent government's failures to extend these resources to all the population in an equitable way, some group of people feel that they are deprived of their rights to access these resources, these kinds of spaces, these kinds of services, and they rise into a confrontation with whoever is supposed to provide these services, hence war. And then you talk about economic polarization. There's you find there are polar groups in economic statuses. There's a group which is extinctly rich, a stinking rich group or category of people in the society, and the other ones who are relatively deprived, so much poor to the extent that they cannot afford even one meal a day or any other basic necessities of life. And so, in such a situation, we find there are two economic polars, and then that results into an altercation whereby these groups will always rise up. They form movements. They want to gain. They want to control resources. They want to have that balanced economic statuses, and that also becomes war. And also discrimination based on race, gender, ethnicity, political affiliations, etc., also results into grievance, which grievance is birth, violence, and war. Then high asset inequality. It is the same as economic polarization. There are people who have a lot of assets. They are the big boys of the country. They are very wealthy. They own merchandise. They own everything. And then there are the other ones who are not recognized anywhere. They are very poor. They don't have anything, any means to control the economic resources of the society. That one also results into grievance. And then we talk about the second theory, which is the theory of youth barrages. So here, the authors argue that the confrontation between the extraordinary barrages of youth with adult population results into violence. There are these youth who feel they are much marginalized by the people who are of an older age, and they try to rise to claim their rights over resources, over politics, over any other statuses. And that's when you will always see the youth movements coming up. We have the economic freedom fighters in South Africa. We have this movement in Uganda, the National Unity Platform. Such movements rising up because they feel there's a gap between the old guards and the youth, who actually constitute a bigger population in most developing countries or less developed countries. So that one also results into war. And these youth groups, youth barrages, they strain social institutions such as labor market, education systems, hence causing internal conflicts. So they always, if when they are to rise, they always target the key areas. They go and organize within social institutions like students groups, student platforms, students movements, labor movements, etc., hence causing a threat to the incumbent government. And then here they are looking at the role of youth in political violence, that actually the most extremisms, the extreme groups of the society, fundamentalist groups of the society or of the world, are always having more than 80% of youth. Look at the Quadrillia, Tijaniya Brotherhood, look at all those other extremist groups. They are always having a large number of youth. So they say that youth have a massive role in ensuring that there exists what we call political violence. And then they say that grievances arise, these grievances from youth arise to manipulate the political system to respond to their discontent. If the economic freedom fighters in South Africa under Julius Malema stand up and they say, look, Ramaphosa, we want this, and then they state massive demonstrations within the cities, and then the economy is crumbling, business is not going on, then the central power, which is the ruling government, is going to respond either by addressing this or by maybe trying to quell and quash these kinds of protests, and hence a change that is negative or positive will be likely to unfold. Lastly, we are talking about the issues faced by the youth barrages that make them to be part and parcel of war, or to be central into having wars happening. For example, we are talking about alienating social services like education. Youth feel like they are being alienated. Education that is given does not make them, skillful to start their own jobs or maybe employment opportunities. They are being educated to go and languish on the streets without getting jobs and all that. The health system is not favoring them and all that. So they lack employment opportunities in the end run, and also a limited political representation, whereby the old guards go into those political spaces they don't want to live, and they leave the youth longing for more and more time to get into those very spaces, and so they lack representation politically. So the youth therefore ought to participate in violent conflicts than old people. They say that it is as a result of all this that the youth are more likely to participate in violent conflicts, in wars, than the old people, because the old people have what it takes. The youth do not have, they feel they are lacking, so therefore they end up doing that. So it is important to know that all these weaken the legitimacy, the confrontation between the youth and old, they weaken the legitimacy and stability of political systems to control these youth barrages, and hence this results into conflict. So if you keep on having these confrontations, if you keep on having these disagreements, these discontents, the political system, the central power, is going to fail to control these kinds of groupings, these kinds of freedom